Welcome to episode 72 of Anchored in Education. I'm E. Scott England, and Anchored in Education is the podcast dedicated to all things education. Educators across the world routinely engage in conversations surrounding fundamentals, concepts, and new ideas that improve this great profession. Sometimes we agree, other times we disagree. But at the end of the day, we are all anchored in education. One of the neatest things about Twitter is discovering that educators I follow really have a lot to teach us. Our profession is full of innovators, trailblazers, and just downright creative people. One such person is Alex Valencic. I was catching up on my Twitter feed a few weeks ago when I came across a post from Alex talking about when he was a classroom teacher. He was talking about the homework menu. Immediately, I was intrigued, and then I was hooked. I read his original blog post talking about the homework menu he had created. I'm not going to get into too much of it here because Alex is our guest today talking about the homework menu he created. I find it an interesting alternative to the traditional practice of assigning homework. Alex, like me, put a lot of research into homework and found some pretty discouraging results. But pressured to still have a component of homework, he creatively came up with a solution that pleased everyone. And it simply sold me on the idea as a great alternative if you cannot do away with the dreaded homework. Alex, welcome to Anchored in Education.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. We're excited to talk more about the homework menu, but before we get started and we get into all of that, we would like to find out a little bit more about you and how you became anchored in education.
You know, when I think about, for me, I feel like being part of education has always been my goal and my dream in my life. My mom will tell you otherwise. She was convinced at one point that I wanted to be an architect or something of that sort, and I keep telling her no. That was actually my best friend who wanted to be an architect, not me. But for me, it was, education has been part of me, even though no one else in my family was an educator at the time. But I think it was really when I was in fourth grade that it really became a definite goal for me. My fourth grade teacher, Kathy McNamara in Washington, Illinois, she was amazing.
Okay.
And this was like the mid-'90s. The things we did in our classroom, I look back now and I realize we did a lot of like project-based learning and student-guided inquiry, and never heard those terms, didn't know that's what it was.
Yeah.
But it was phenomenal. And I was like, this is cool. I want to be able to do this. She gave us lots of opportunities to teach and learn from each other, tolerated some crazy projects. I did a book report one time on the entire Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis and took like half an hour. And she and the entire class just let me go.
Yeah.
They never said, hey, cut it short. You're taking too long. So that's what it got me started. And, I never looked back. I think one of my most memorable people will ask me, how long have you been in education? I'm like, well, I've been teaching professionally for about 12 years now. But really, I started teaching when I was 13 because my Sunday school teacher never showed up for our class.
Oh.
Like, we don't know what happened. She just never came. So I would just go to our church library, find our lesson manual for our class, and I taught my class.
Wow.
For 6 months. And finally, our Sunday school president, his son was in the class. He walked by one day. He's like, hey, where's your guys' teacher? And everyone's like, Alex is our teacher. And he's like, no, he's not. I'm like, well, I've been teaching the class for 6 months. So I say, that's what got me anchored.
Wow, that is, I love hearing stories about how other educators have inspired us. My personal story has, a significant person in my life in education that inspired me. And, it's kind of one of those things. I always wanted to be a teacher as well. And, it's nice to look back, and I think, I hope someday somebody's, doing a podcast interview and can look back at something I've done to inspire them, much like your teacher has done for you. So, inspiring story. Now, let's shift and let's talk about when you were teaching fourth grade. So, you've commented many times through blogs and on Twitter that you gave homework because, quote, that's what we do in education, end quote. Then you had a revelation after a few years in teaching that homework was a struggle for some families. Do you think maybe you can walk us through that revelation?
Yeah, for sure. So when I first started teaching, like you said, I was teaching fourth grade, and I walked in my classroom, and we were a district that had copyright rights with one of our textbook publishers. So I had filing cabinets full of photocopies of homework assignments for math.
Okay.
And, I'm a first-year teacher, and you look and you're like, oh, it's homework. Okay, it's every single day a student gets a homework assignment for math, because what else are you supposed to do with these hundreds of photocopies?
Right.
And I dutifully handed them out every single day, and some students dutifully turned them in every day. Some students never turned in a single assignment. Some would get caught by their parents with like 50 assignments stuffed in a backpack and were told that they had to complete every single one of them and turn them in. And I would check them. I never graded the homework, but I would always check off to see who had turned it in. I would glance at a few problems, trying to see, are students, are they getting it or are they not? But I started comparing it to my classroom assessments and realized that there wasn't really any connection between it. But some students would do great on their homework and fail a math test. Some would not turn in a single homework assignment and still get perfect scores on all their math tests. So it's like, why am I really doing this? And it's like, well, it's in the school handbook. We have to do homework. So I'm like, okay, I'll keep doing it. But that revelatory moment was when I had a parent call me one day apologizing because her child had been working on his math homework assignment for something like 3 hours the night before.
Wow.
And didn't get it done. And the parent was apologizing. It's like, oh, just make sure you send home today's assignment. We'll make sure he gets it done. And I was dumbfounded. And it's like,
sure.
Our homework, fourth grade, like our school handbook says, homework should be about 40, 45 minutes a night, and half that time should be reading. So why do I have students who are spending hours on an assignment that clearly they don't get?
Right.
But they're doing it because their parents think they have to do it, and they want to please their teacher. And it made me realize I have completely misrepresented to my students somehow what the purpose of this homework was. Instead of being just extra practice to reinforce skills, it was becoming a burden that wasn't helping anybody. And I was like, all right, talk to the whole class and said, look, 45 minutes, if you're done with your homework at the end of 45 minutes, stop what you're doing, have your parents jot a note that says, this is how much you got done, turn it in, I'll only look at the stuff you got done. You don't have to finish the entire thing.
Okay. And that's how you got through that, the rest of that year. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And so then after that year, over the summer, you made some adjustments. You made some adjustments, got through the year. Then over the summer, you did what great educators do. You started digging into the research, and the research was on homework. So hours upon hours of researching, you came to the same conclusion. Homework has little to no educational benefit. So what do you think was the most compelling piece of research that became your light bulb moment, let's say?
So for me, it was looking through, and I found this study that had been done, it was like the 1980s by a fellow, Harris Cooper, who he did this meta-analysis of research over homework for the previous 30 years. And what he found, I have it up here in front of me, is that in his synopsis, he says homework has a positive effect on achievement, but it varies dramatically with grade level. For high school students, homework has substantial positive effect.
Okay.
For elementary school students, the effect of homework on achievement is negligible. And then it's like, okay, but this is in the 80s. Teaching practices have changed. Maybe things have changed over time also relating to homework. Well, he and his team did another meta-analysis 30 years later and found pretty much the same thing. That essentially what they said is that for elementary students, no amount of homework, large or small, affects achievement. None at all. So it's not that homework was hurting students. It wasn't that it was harming them. It just had a completely net zero effect on their achievement.
Right.
And that just blew me away because I was fortunate. I lived in a college community, and lots of my friends were working on doctoral studies, and we would talk about the importance of the research, and they would tell me all the time, the worst thing you can have when you do research is something that has a net zero effect, because you can't report on that.
Okay.
You can't be like, hey, this doesn't do anything. Like, you always have to have, it has to either help or hurt.
Sure.
And yet what I found from Dr. Cooper's work is, especially at the elementary level, homework doesn't do anything. So I started asking people, I said, okay, why are we doing homework? And I would get answers like, well, it helps students learn time management skills, and it helps them prepare for college, and it helps them to do this. And I'm like, wait, I'm teaching fourth graders. They're 10 years old.
Right.
Do I really need to be helping them prepare for college? That's like 8-10 years down the road.
Yeah.
Like, why are we pushing them to get into college when they're 10? Let's focus on what they need to do when they're 10 years old.
Sounds reasonable.
So that became, for me, I was just like, wow, we need to change what we're doing. And the executive functioning skills, well, it turns out that students who start getting homework in middle school do just as well as students who got homework starting in kindergarten, because from kindergarten to fifth grade, homework doesn't make a difference.
Okay. So what's interesting is, so the following year, you took that information, that research, and you're armed with research. That's what we ask our educators to do. And you instituted a no homework policy, with the exception of reading. That was a non-negotiable for you. But it kind of became a laughable moment, because not everyone was happy with this approach. So let's spend a few minutes talking about this, as it was what led to the creation of the homework menu.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the year, I wrote out a letter and sent it home with all my students to their families, letting them know that for this year, the only homework expectation was for students to do 20 to 25 minutes of independent reading a night, and that's all there was. The students, they thought it was the greatest thing ever.
Sure, they did.
Wait, really? All we have to do is read? And I said, and I'm not going to make you fill out reading logs. You don't have to report anything back to me. I just want you to read every night. And they're like, wait, that's really all we have to do? And I said, seriously, that's all you have to do. Make sure you tell your parents. Here's the letter. And I even included some citations to that research, because I had some parents who I knew who would want to know. Well, time goes by. I think things are fine and dandy until I get an email from my principal who says, hey, I got a call from some of the parents in your classroom. We need to talk.
Uh-oh.
And it's like, what-oh? Like, what did I do? Now, something that's important to realize in this is that my plan time was first thing in the morning. And I would get these emails from my principal usually just after my plan time finished. And I would catch it, I'd walk by my computer and I would notice it. And then I realized I wouldn't have a chance to go to talk to her until the end of the day.
And so you just had to think about it all day.
Yep, hours all day trying to figure out what on earth did I do. Well, I go down to talk to her, and she said, parents in your class want to know why you're not doing homework anymore. And it's like, what do you mean? I told them why. And she said, well, let's back up. Mr. Valencic, why aren't you doing homework? And I realized, oops, I kind of forgot to tell my principal about my plan. I just went with it.
Right.
And she was like, I can't support you and I don't know what you're doing. It's like, okay, this is totally on me. We talked about it, and he said, this is what I was doing. Here's why I did it. Here's the research to support it. And she said, okay, well, here's the thing. The parents want you to give them homework and not just independent reading every day. You have to give them something.
Okay.
And I said, okay, well, when you say I have to give them something, do I have to give them a math homework assignment sheet every day? And she said, well, no, there has to be some sort of homework. And it's like, okay, well, let me give out some of these math worksheets while I figure this out, but I want to come up with something a little bit different. And she said, okay, well, just keep me in the loop this time. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'll definitely do that. And I sat down at my computer and I just opened up a Google Doc and I just started typing out content areas in our classroom and things I could tell students to do. And it was just, this is plain white piece of paper with just lists and bullet points of like reading, things you could do for reading, writing, math, so social studies, science, PE. I just kind of jotted it all down. Yeah. And it was like, here we go. Here's a list of options for my students. So I could say, this is your homework. Pick something on here. And that was the first prototype of what became my homework menu.
Okay, and we're going to, that's what we're going to dive into. But I think let's reiterate something that you pointed out. That's just a good thing for all educators to hear is the communication piece to your building principal, or if you're a building principal, the communication to your superintendent, or if you're a superintendent, the communication to the board. And that way everybody can stay on page. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Because it's a good lesson to learn, especially for our newer teachers that's going into the profession. They're going to have some innovative ideas like we're getting ready to hear with the homework menu, but we want to make sure that they stay in communication. So I appreciate you saying that, Alex.
Yeah, I think it was a big lesson for me. And it's like my principal, she was very supportive of what I was doing. I forgot to communicate it to her when I communicated everything else. And she also, shortly after that, incidentally asked teachers to, anytime we sent letters to parents, she said, can you just send me a copy of it also, just so I know what you guys are communicating?
Good idea.
Good idea. So, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the homework menu. This is what we've all been waiting for. We want to know, the concept. So you've talked about the bullet point on the white page on the Google Doc, but it evolved much more. And then we want to know about the application. It's really, to me, it's a bit of true genius, and we've got to spend some time diving into this.
Yeah, for sure. So as I started working through this document, like I started off as reading, writing, math. Those were the first things I put in because that's what we traditionally assign students for homework. But I started putting into those lists for reading some of the options. I told students you can read a book that you picked on your own. If you're in one of our literature circles we have in class or one of your reading groups, read that book. If you want to use one of the websites we've been using in our classroom at the time, my students were really into Wonderopolis and Newsela, so they were able to get onto that. And I told them, for writing activity, if you want to just write anything at all, like you're writing in a diary or a journal, or you want to write an essay or a poem, if you want to practice your handwriting, if you're working on a research project in the class, because we did a lot of those, that could all count towards homework. And then, of course, math, we had the math worksheets, which I told them was still an option. If a student wanted a math worksheet, I still had those filing cabinets full of them. I was happy to give them to them if they wanted them. But we had all the different online learning products we were using also, Front Row, which has now become Preckle, Extra Math, Khan Academy, all those things. So I put these in the list. But then I remembered a conversation I had with one of my students he was one of my higher performing students academically, and he was also very involved in athletics outside of school. He was on a traveling baseball team. He played football. He was getting ready to do track and field events in middle school. And there were some days where he would get home and he would go to his practices and not get back home until 7, 8 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And it's when is he supposed to fit in the academic homework when he's doing this physical fitness work that is important also?
Sure.
So I decided to add a category for that, physical fitness. And I said, look, if you're on a team sport or individual sports, or you're doing some sort of aerobic exercise, that can count as your homework for the evening. We do PE in school. Why can't you do PE at home?
Absolutely.
But then, of course, on the other side of that, I had students who were doing piano lessons or violin, or they were singing in community choirs. I had a student who did ballet. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, fine arts. That can be another category.
Sure.
So I added this to my running document, and I looked at it and it's like, okay, but, I wanted to make sure that the reading was still the non-negotiable for doing the homework. That students, they had to do homework. They had to do reading every single night. And then I wanted them to pick something else from this list. Well, so I get this list together. I look at it. I'm like, okay, I think this could be something that works. And my wife saw what I was doing. And what you need to know about her is she is a graphic designer. And she looked at my bullet points on white paper, and she gave me that look that was very clearly oh, honey, no, don't you dare give this to these students.
Don't make that
they're
public.
They're going to lose that paper in no time.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, help me rethink this. And while I was talking through my idea, it's like, there's these list of options. Reading needs to be non-negotiable. And then there's kind of the second light bulb that came with me is, this is a menu. Now, I'll ask you, Scott, when you go to a restaurant, you sit down, the server brings you a menu, and then what do they ask you, or what do they bring you after they give you your menu?
The first thing they ask is what they can get me a drink, or they just put the water right on the table and then ask me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if you say, no, I'm fine, I'm not getting any drinks, they're going to show up with a glass of water for you anyway.
Absolutely.
Because getting a drink at a restaurant, that is a non-negotiable for restaurants.
Sure.
So it's like, okay, well, for this menu, let's actually make this look like a restaurant menu. And our beverages are going to be the reading. Because that's going to be that thing you always get your beverage when you go to a restaurant.
What. Reading is no matter what. Yeah.
And I shared this with my class, and the first thing I led with them is like, okay, I need to make sure they've all had this experience. Because if they haven't, then this doesn't make any sense to them. So it's like, all right, how many of you have at some point gone to a restaurant where you actually get to sit down at a table with a menu and order? And every single student in my class had done that at least once. So they were familiar with the idea.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay, awesome. Because now they know this, okay, we're going to have an actual menu. And my wife, she put it together. She assigned the categories, which they're completely arbitrary, but she put things like soups and salads, the entrees, desserts, appetizers, all these things. And the only thing is okay, but the reading has to be under beverages.
Yep.
Because that needs to be that one non-negotiable. And I presented it to the students, and they were like, this is great. Awesome. So we have to do reading, and then we have to do one other thing off this list. And some of them, after talking to parents, I put together a checklist so they could actually mark off what they were doing. After a couple of years, I did away with that because, honestly, it was just extra paperwork and was kind of defeating the purpose of what I wanted to do with the menu, of it really being the students and their families were deciding what to do. And the families were a really important part with that. Is when I share this, I say, this is student voice and choice at home.
Yeah.
But the parent says, Scott, you have to work on some math tonight. Well, you don't get to say, well, Mr. Valencic says I can pick what I want to do. It's like, nope. Your parent is telling you this is what you have to do. So parents could veto the student's decision if they wanted to.
All right.
Usually that didn't happen. So I shared this out with my students. And some of my colleagues, they knew about it, but none of them seemed to be really interested in it. And time goes by, and there was one of the teacher Twitter chats. It was one of the stat chats.
Yeah.
We were talking about homework, and in the course of the discussion, I tweet out there and said, oh, well, my solution for homework was to put together this menu, and I included a copy of the PDF. And, I'm used to when I do those Twitter chats, a few people respond, and they're just like, oh, yeah, this is cool, and then you never hear anything.
Right.
And this one, I'm going through, and it's getting, people are liking it and retweeting it and commenting on it, and it's getting, it's crossing the 100 mark.
Yeah, it blew up a little bit.
They're still contacting me. They're sending me, the DMs and saying, hey, can I get a copy of this menu? And I'm like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah.
People are really excited about this. So we were able to take the PDF I made, and we're able to rearrange the document so it's actually editable.
Okay.
So that someone can actually download a copy, and they can put in their own options under the categories.
Okay.
And so then it's like, okay, I can share this out. And I'm not going to charge anyone for it. It drives me crazy that I know there are teachers who sell their products, and that's just not something for me. I'm all about, teachers help each other.
Absolutely.
We help each other out. And if I have a good idea, I'm going to share that with others. And I got some really great feedback from someone when she was looking at my menu. She said, hey, you got reading, writing, mathematics, physical fitness, fine arts. Where's the social emotional learning skills on your menu?
Oh.
And for me, it was just like that dummy moment. It hit my forehead. I'm like, I can't believe I left this off. So went back and redesigned the menu, added social emotional learning. So we have these 6 categories.
Yeah.
And we're able to share it out. And I've had dozens of people ask me for copies of it. They've said they're going to use it in their classes. I actually don't know if anyone has quite yet, because the first time I shared it out, it was at kind of towards the end of the school year, and then we got the start of this year. Some of the teachers said they wanted to wait a little bit before putting it into place. Then several said, all right, second semester, we're going to use it. And then, of course, the world kind of blew up.
A little bit, yeah. Then 2020 happened.
Yep.
So Alex, before we go, you talked about, you tweeted out, you made it available right away, but you're no longer in the classroom, correct?
Correct.
All right. So can you share your intentions with the homework menu, since you're not in the classroom any longer? I mean, can people still go find this? Where can they find it? And what is your hopes for the homework menu now that you've stepped out of the classroom? I mean, still definitely anchored in education, but out of the classroom. Where would you like to see the homework menu going?
I think ultimately where I'd like to see it go is I'd just like teachers to know it's an option out there for them to use with their students, so they can allow that student voice and choice to be a part of what students do outside of school also. That I have it available on my blog. It's coordinatingthecentury.wordpress.com. It's a long name, but it's my job title now. I'm the curriculum coordinator for 21st Century Teaching and Learning. So I like to just say that my blog, I joke that I'm responsible for coordinating the 21st century, because that's how my job title usually gets abbreviated, is just 21st Century Coordinator.
That's funny.
So I did have it pinned to the top of my Twitter account. I'll probably pin it there again, but because of all the things with COVID-19, I pinned something else a while ago, just reflecting on our need to adjust and adapt to whatever is going on. But my main goal is I want teachers to be able to use this and implement it. Use it with their students if it works. Try something similar if the menu as I have it designed doesn't work for them. I get the opportunity, or have had the opportunity, to go to some conferences and share the menu there. Some of them were Illinois conferences. There's one I shared it at a national conference, the Teach Better conference in Ohio last year. Got to share that. So really, I want people to know that this idea is out there and it can be used, and that if they're wanting to get help with it, they can reach out to me. I'm happy to give some feedback, bounce ideas off of them, if they're within my own district, of course, and I can go and help them put into place with their class. But if someone just wants to shoot me a message, Twitter's the best way to get a hold of me. It's at Alex Valencic, and always happy to help with it. But I guess for me, it really gets down to, I just want teachers to realize, especially at the elementary level, that traditional homework is easy to assign and easy to grade, but it's not really making any difference in the lives of our students.
Right.
So if we can give them something else that's going to let them feel more connected, the classroom to their home, home to the classroom. I mean, I'll just share that I had more students inviting me to piano recitals and football games and soccer games and, anything else, because they knew that I knew they were doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it's like the things they did at home were the things they did at home. I even had a student who invited me she was in her church choir and said, hey, we're actually going to be singing this Sunday. Can you come? And unfortunately, I wasn't able to, but just that invitation made me realize that students want to have that connection. And the connection doesn't have to be always from the school to the home. It can be from the home to the school. And I really think the homework menu is a way to make that connection a reality.
Right. And that goes right back to those same connections we talked about at the beginning of this episode, in which, down the road, there's going to be a lot of students that remember Mr. Valencic and the homework menu. Alex, we want to thank you so much for joining us on Anchored in Education, sharing more about the homework menu today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I'll make sure I get the links out to you so you can share them out to your listeners.
Yes, absolutely. We will put a link to your website on my website, and then we'll also, again, share your Twitter handle so people can follow you. You're definitely worth the follow. So thanks again.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, you can read more about Alex on my website, escottengland.com. And of course, you can find him on Twitter just like I did. Search at Alex T. Valencic. Now, before I wrap up today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to Anchored in Education on whatever platform you get your podcasts. Now, I told you the homework menu was neat. As educators, we are faced with many mandates and expectations that we do not necessarily agree with. Homework is a big one, but curriculum and behavior programs are others. When faced with these mandates, educators must figure out how to comply without jeopardizing their core beliefs. This is exactly what Alex did. Creating the homework menu was a solution to a problem that kept everyone happy. I'm reminded of the book by Sean Achor, The Orange Frog. It is a parable based off the principles found in Sean's other book, The Happiness Advantage. What Alex did was find an orange frog solution to a problem. He could have stayed like a green frog, assigning homework because that's the expectation of what other teachers do. Instead, he found a way to offer the homework with student choice. In education, we need more orange frogs. We need more Alex Valencics. We are approaching an interesting start back to school. This is an easy time to get caught up in the minute details. Instead of looking at each situation through a narrow lens, let's instead look at it through a lens of creativity, through a lens of innovation. For lack of better words, let's have our cake and eat it too. Our districts, our schools, our classrooms, our students, they will all end up for the better when we do that. Because remember, at the end of the day, we are all anchored in education.